This is the Unspoken Podcast on the Undetermined Podcast Network.
You are listening to the Unspoken Podcast, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. Hey now! It's Tom Albano along with Nick Federa. And of course I had to start with Tony Reale. I threw my promise from last week.
Of course you did. Of course you did, folks. And this is not going to stop. This train has left the station, and it will keep going until the end of time. You're eventually going to run out of sportscasters to impersonate, you know.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should keep it to one a week, if that many.
Okay,
Sometimes.
Well, maybe we'll be doing this long enough. There'll be other sportscasters in the business by the time we're finished. Hopefully, we can keep doing this.
I can't wait till I'm impersonating the Atlanta Braves AA team play-by-play announcer that nobody knows.
Yeah. Or maybe we'll be in the business so long you'll actually be impersonating yourself. So let's go into the week that was, folks. Let's start off with, we're recording this on Friday. Let's go back to what happened last Saturday night, I think it was, with UFC
207.
The wonderful results from UFC 207. So,
if I could for a second, Nick, I think I just want to say on behalf of everyone at the Undetermined Podcast Network, especially us here at the Unspoken Podcast, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone right now being affected by the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting that's going on right now. It's about 3:15 where we are right now, and this may have occurred. How long ago was this, Nick? Like an hour ago?
About an hour and a half ago.
An hour and a half ago, and news is still developing on the shooting. Apparently, like 15 or so minutes ago, there were unconfirmed reports of additional shots going on.
Everything is confirmed at this point, though. So
right. I was going to say, all our listeners are going to be hearing this podcast on the weekend or Monday, basically days after we figure more things out. Right now, as we're recording, things are just developing. So, I mean, this is scary. I feel so bad. Thoughts and prayers go out to everyone affected.
And we just wanted to let you guys know.
Yeah, I feel bad. Let's try our best to continue. However, yes, last Saturday night not last Saturday, actually it was last Friday night was UFC.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that myself because Saturday was New Year, so UFC did their pay-per-view on Friday night.
Yeah, they did.
And it was a pretty it's a weird card to explain because there were two matches on the main card that should have just been on the prelims. We should have had Cain Velasquez versus Fabricio Werdum, but that got canceled on Christmas Eve. A week before the event. That killed me. It was like that was one of the matches I was really looking forward to. But I guess the Nevada State Athletic Commission decided Cain wasn't healthy enough or something. Cain's like, I feel fine. The fact that Cain Velasquez had to find out through Twitter, that's pitiful.
He did?
He found out through Twitter.
Oof.
And then Brent Okamoto of ESPN called him after that and had to explain everything. The journalist had to explain.
That's position. As journalism students, as studying journalism as we are, that's not really something that you see a lot of journalists do, folks. That's really weird.
The world of mixed martial arts is just something completely out of the ordinary.
It is the Wild West in a lot of ways, but you're starting, as more money starts to flow into the sport, you'll see a lot more. I'm not going to say people that know what they're doing, but like I said, there's a lot of growing pains with this sport. The fact that we're at 200. The fact we're at 207 events. I mean,
I mean, even more when you consider all the TV as 10 years. Yeah, it's only 10 years, and the UFC is like 23 years old right now. The MSG show was its anniversary, so it was 23 years. And I mean, back in the 90s, the UFC was like no rules whatsoever.
I don't even remember that. I don't even remember that at all.
1993 UFC was like a complete no holds barred. It was crazy.
I was only 3 years old. I was only a toddler, so no wonder.
Right. I wasn't even born when the first UFC happened. I was still a year away.
Yeah, it's a good point. But the big story to come out of UFC was the one that was dominating, a lot of sports headlines this past week was our girl Ronda Rousey. And my goodness, and at a certain point, for those of you who don't know, she was mounting this big comeback fight after she had lost to Holly Holm, I think, about a year ago.
Yeah, it was in November 2015.
And it was the first time I think she'd ever been knocked out. And it was a big shock.
First time she ever lost.
First time she ever lost. And it was a big shock to everybody. It was a big shock to the industry. And she spent all this time, with the media attention, getting herself back into fighting shape. And this was going to be her big comeback bout where she was going to get in that ring, kick ass, and take back what she felt was rightfully hers. But Amanda Nunes had other ideas, apparently, and the fight didn't last long.
No, 48 seconds. 48 seconds.
Is that shorter than the Holly Holm match? I can't remember.
Yes. Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey went into round 2.
Ooh.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I could go to make a bagel, to prepare a bagel for breakfast, and come back and the fight would already be over. I could leave to go to the bathroom, come back, and the fight would already be over.
Fight's over.
It's like, oh, what the hell?
I know, right?
But yeah, Ronda, man. I mean, social media exploded when she lost.
It did. It really did. And because I think you were hearing some voices. I was hearing a lot of voices that she wasn't as good as she used to be. She's gonna get her basically annihilated in that fight. And now that she has lost, I mean, now you're hearing, she had too much. She had too many yes men, hangers on. Telling her that she could do this. And I really don't know what to think, because she is, for somebody who knows next to nothing about the league, I mean, she was the easily recognizable figure for us to latch on, for, the novices like myself to latch on to. Almost like somebody who didn't know anything about boxing could latch on to Mike Tyson, or could latch on to Muhammad Ali. And Ronda Rousey, at least for me, was that figure, and now she kind of isn't anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's such. I mean, here's the thing: you saw all my comments that I was saying on Friday night, right?
Yeah.
For those of you who missed it, I posted a whole thing on the Undetermined Facebook where I was pretty much going off about what was going on with the Ronda Rousey situation. Pretty much, my thoughts are, first of all, you can't take away from her legacy. You can't. She revolutionized women's MMA. She put it on the map. I mean, in 2000...
It wasn't there before.
Well, here's the thing. In 2011, I mean, it was always in the smaller promotions, the promotions that tried to be like the UFC, like Strikeforce, but it never came into the UFC. In 2011, I think it was 2011,
there was a TMZ interview with UFC president Dana White.
And he was asked, when are women ever going to step foot in the octagon? And he said, never. And then 2 years later, this was after the UFC had bought Strikeforce, and Ronda Rousey was brought in as the first UFC women's bantamweight champion. I believe that's because she was the last Strikeforce women's bantamweight champion before the buyout. And I don't know. I mean, Rousey just dominated. Ronda Rousey, her armbar submissions, she was completely dominant. No one thought she could be stopped. And then Holly Holm came along. And it was just something different about Ronda when the Holly Holm fight happened. This was after all the publicity. This was after all the movies that she did and all the acting, her acting career starting, basically. And she just looked, the time when I was watching the UFC, I think it was 193 it was. And it was the build-up to the whole Ronda Rousey fight. Holm looked cool. She looked, she looked level-minded.
And then you had Ronda Rousey, and she seemed to come out more aggressive at this point.
When she lost to Holm. And then, of course, the kick heard round the world happened, and Rousey lost, and, I mean, she basically said during her time away from the octagon after that loss, she thought of suicide.
And it was hard not to feel for her. I mean, it was. I mean, whether you liked her or you hated her, I mean, at least you understood. But do you feel like that the media attention hurt her? Affected her adversely going into the Holly Holm fight and the Amanda Nunes fight?
I mean, maybe. I mean, it's difficult because you had
the Ronda Rousey in the Holly Holm fight and the Ronda Rousey in the Amanda Nunes fight. It was two different Ronda Rouseys.
One, she was a normal UFC competitor. On the other, we hadn't seen her in about a year at any UFC event. Because I remember it was, I think it was November. It was either November 13th. No, November 14th.
2015 was UFC 193 when she lost to Holm.
And then November 11th of 2016, the night before UFC 205, UFC 205 in Madison Square Garden, was the next time we saw her in any form of a UFC event. So it had been a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's weird to explain because, Ronda Rousey's legacy will always be intact. She was the face of women's MMA, brought it to the map, brought it to the limelight in the UFC. And when the women of UFC are mentioned,
everyone is going to think of Ronda Rousey.
But I do believe we have seen
the last of Ronda Rousey
in the UFC. In the words of one of her training partners, 2016 judo gold medalist from America, Kayla Harrison, you have to have the heart in it. And if it's drained out of you, at some point you got to call it a career.
Yeah. It happens. It happened to everybody.
Right. Going back to what I was saying on the Facebook, I mean, I was going in that direction anyways, but I feel like you cannot put so much of the loss on Ronda. Because even though Ronda is an amazing athlete, Amanda Nunes is an amazing athlete as well.
Yeah, you can't discount what Amanda Nunes did by any stretch of the imagination, or Holly Holm. It's not that they squeaked by with a close victory. No, that was a knockout. Let's give credit where credit is due here.
Have you seen what Amanda Nunes looks like, right?
Oh, yeah, Amazon basically.
She's strong. She's got
Hulk
huge strength. Right. Her arms are she's got guns.
Yeah. And like I said, let's give credit here. I mean, they worked harder. They did faster and stronger wins in this profession.
And Nunez, at the main event of UFC 200, beat Miesha Tate for the title. And I watched that match. It ended with
Nunez making Miesha Tate tap out
on the ground, like to a choke. But she didn't even need to. She was brutalizing her. She was brutalizing Tate with heavy blows. Like, the submission was just to make a statement, if anything. And then she follows up the performance, which went about 2 minutes, I think. Maybe 3. With a 48-second knockout of Ronda Rousey. That's pure talent. And I just want to say, I think as much as, Ronda Rousey is the face, will always be a face of women's. And as much as people are saying, it's time to call it a career for Ronda, I'm not even going to put as much blame because I think it's Amanda Nunes' time. The kind of run that Ronda Rousey just went on, that's going to be Amanda Nunes now.
He's hoping we can find, because this league is going to need. It could always need. It has bankable stars now. I mean, with Conor McGregor,
right?
But it could always. Everybody could always use more because more recognizable people, more eyeballs on screen, and more asses in seats.
Right. I think the UFC is filled with talent. I just think, and mark my words, it's going to be a long time.
If you look at Rousey's reign, and how long did that go over women's MMA? Like 3-4 years?
I mean, I think that's going to be the minimum that Amanda Nunes, holds the title. I think it could be even longer. She could have an Anderson Silva kind of,
and that would be.
Or if she wants to move up to the new women's, I think it's the new women's featherweight division that they're going to start and determine a champion at UFC 208 in Brooklyn, which Holly Holm is one of the competitors in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if she wants to give up that belt and then move up a weight class and win that title, I think Amanda Nunes could do that. I don't think there's any stopping her.
And you know what? I think there might come a time. It might not be now. It might. But there might be a time where the women's UFC fighters are more popular and well-known than the men.
Well, I think that was a case right now with Ronda Rousey. Yeah. I mean, maybe Conor McGregor. I think that's been the constant debate in UFC. Who is more the face of the UFC, Ronda or Conor? If you ask me, over the last year, I would have to go with Conor only because Ronda basically dropped off from the scene, like we just said. Yeah. But, like, Ronda was a face. Conor's a face now. I think Amanda Nunes is on her way to becoming a face.
And faces are what they need. Faces, like I said, what puts eyeballs on screens and asses in seats.
Right. And now, before we go on to our other topics,
right?
I got something I need to get off my chest. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. This is the forum to bitch. Go ahead.
I need my soapbox. I need a soapbox.
All right. Hold on, folks. He's getting his soapbox.
And getting okay. All right.
All right. You need a megaphone? We should get you a megaphone.
I don't. I wish I had a megaphone with me. Okay, but basically, Johnny Hendricks, you piece of shit.
Oh boy.
Okay,
Johnny Hendricks,
you piece of crap. Let me tell you something, man. I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know what's sad? I love Johnny Hendricks. When he fought George St. Pierre at UFC 167, and he had that split decision loss, I was pissed. Because I watched the fight and I thought, Hendricks won. The judges were wrong. And then St. Pierre took the break. So I'm like,
St. Pierre even knows he's lost.
So then he goes and faces Robbie Lawler for the vacant championship at 170 in March of 14. He wins. And then the tide starts to turn for me on December 6th, 2014 at UFC 181. Where it's like he's up 2-1 in this fight. But like round 4 and 5, he basically is just keeping his distance, or he's on the ground and he's not really doing anything for the last 2 rounds. And lo and behold, he loses to Robbie Lawler. The judges see it in favor of Lawler. Because, you know why? Because I believe, as a UFC fighter, yes, the ground game is important. Yes, keeping your distance is important. But you're supposed to fight. You are a champion. You are supposed to fight. So then, the next March 15, I have his things right here. March 15, he beats Matt Brown, whatever. Then he takes time off. I think this is where the weight issues begin to start. Yeah. So UFC 192, he's expected to face Tyron Woodley, who actually is the current UFC welterweight champion this day. But then he has an intentional, I'm reading off what it says on Wikipedia, an intestinal blockage and kidney stone attack during a weight cut. It's
that's uncomfortable. Oh.
I have to give respect to UFC fighters who do that shit. It's like, I really don't want to do that shit. But that's one time. So it's like, okay, that happens. I mean, here's my big thing. It's a pet peeve of mine. I feel like if you're going to go into a sport like UFC or even just boxing or wrestling, you need to, make weight. You know the circumstances. Yes, weight cutting is a gruesome process. But, you know what you're getting yourself into. Which brings me to my point. So then he fights Stephen Thompson in February. Here comes a bout with Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 200, the big one in July. And he misses weight. I think he missed it by, he missed it by 1.25 pounds. So he has to forfeit 20% of his purse, and then he loses. So then here comes this Neil Magny fight at 207. And what Hendricks decides to do is take shots at the media. He basically challenges us to a weight cutting contest, and then says, and he's pretty much like, oh, why don't you guys try? I'm almost there. I'm going to make weight and stuff. And he's 3.5 pounds over!
And
he's 3.5 pounds over!
He's basically using the same excuse I do when people tell me I'm doing something wrong. Yeah, you want to do this? And that's never a good thing to do.
3.5 points!
More money than me.
I know, Nick, but the point is, he did worse than last time. And if he had missed another 0.5 pound, it would have been 30% of his purse, and not 20. And then, how the fight went, sure. You can make the argument that he should have won. How did he freaking miss weight twice in a row, 3 times if you count the fight that had to be canceled because of his blockage and kidney stone attack? Jesus Christ.
Ooh, goodness gracious.
You can make the arguments that he should have. I could see it, but I can also see the argument of, well, you missed weight, so more put on you, and, more pressure put on you, and, I'm sorry. Life's a bitch. Karma.
This has been your hot take of the week.
That is my hot take of the week. Thank you very much. So Johnny Hendricks to move up now to the middleweight division because of his weight issues. So it's a good thing we didn't talk about this last week. We were just starting to find out the details about it. But
would have been a hot take for 2 straight weeks.
Exactly. Here's my point. Johnny Hendricks, you now need to do something. You have lost 3 straight bouts. Heck, since you won the title, and then you lost the title. If you're going to count that title loss, you've lost 4 of your last 5 since winning the title. Do something. Because if you don't do anything, I hear Bellator is calling. That's my hot take.
That, sir, was a rant worthy of Bayless. I applaud you, sir. I do. There were.
But I'm not a Cowboys
You
lover.
can't see it, ladies and gentlemen, but the veins were bulging in his neck. You couldn't tell. He was losing his mind, almost like First Take up in this pitch. It's amazing.
Do you embrace debate, Nick?
I embrace debate. I just don't embrace Skip Bayless.
You don't embrace him.
I love a good rant. I love a good rant. That was great. That was great. Seriously. Everybody needs a good screaming rant at once. We just happen to have a forum where people can listen to us bitch. That's basically what podcasting is, right?
Right. You're listening to the Unspoken Podcast, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. But speaking of bitch, let's talk about New Year's Eve.
Oh, yes. All right, a little context for those of you who had missed it. Basically, every year, ABC does the New Year's Rockin' Eve show, just like Dick Clark did.
Right, now it's Ryan Seacrest.
Now it's with Ryan Seacrest because they're turning Ryan Seacrest into Dick Clark. That's a conversation for another day. That's a hot take. That's a hot take filled rant for another day. I don't think I have that one in me right now, Tom. But I will say this. So what happened was that Mariah Carey took the stage. Well, I mean, she was the hyped guest going into this because I think was this the first time she had ever done it? Or
I don't know. But I know she was the most hyped singer going into this.
Yes, she was a part of a lot of the promotional material leading up to the show, and when she gets on stage, it's a disaster of Janet Jacksonian proportion. It really is.
Absolutely.
She apparently couldn't hear her backing track, and she basically refused to sing. So it was basically, if you can imagine, if you weren't there, or if you were celebrating New Year's Eve, imagine flailing in a burning room. That's basically how I can imagine. It's basically 2 straight minutes of her just strutting along the stage, mouth closed, and the music's going, and she's basically just.
From my understanding, what had happened was, I think she had something in her ear, an earpiece, where she was supposed to hear the melody and the songs going on, and that supposedly either stopped working or fell out.
I heard it actually stopped working.
It stopped working.
It's hard to tell because, all this past week there's been like a he said, she said between Mariah's team.
The finger of blame. That's what I call it. You did this. No, you did this.
The unholy finger of blame. That's what that is. And basically, during the second song, I think one of them, it wasn't even, for some of the songs, it was just there was lip syncing, but you had lip syncing the high notes, so she didn't have to do it.
Right,
but for certain songs, she wasn't even. You could hear the backing track of her vocals, but her mouth wasn't moving. It's like a badly dubbed Godzilla movie.
I remember it was Emotions was the song that was going on, and I mean, wow! You want to talk emotions? I'll tell you what emotion was going through me: awkwardness.
It was.
I just felt so awkward. I was with my family watching this, and I'm like, "What the fuck is she doing?"
I was sitting in my fucking basement. I was sitting in my basement. I hadn't been drinking that much at that point, and I looked at the TV and I thought, "Am I drunk or is this actually happening right now?"
I heard reports she was drunk.
That was the first thing I heard, actually, and a lot of people. There were a lot of people, in the basement of my house celebrating like we do every New Year's Eve. And we all were sitting there for 2 straight minutes, actually for the entirety of her performance, just looking at the TV, just slack-jawed, dumbfounded. And I remember saying out loud, involuntarily, "Oh, shit." Because if you remember, I don't know if you remember this, but the whole Nipplegate controversy from the Super Bowl
Right.
a long time back.
The Janet Jackson?
Yeah, how old were you when that happened?
What Super Bowl was that? I don't remember.
That was 2002 or 2004. I'm not sure.
I was going to say the Patriots Super Bowl winning in that era always seemed the same to me. Actually, I have a phone right here. We should just look that up. You know that. I don't know why we...
Yeah, basically, this was...
2004.
Yeah,
2004 Super Bowl. So I must have been like 8.
Yeah. So I was right on the edge of puberty, and because I had just turned 12, and the Mariah Carey performance, while not as salacious and bombshell impact of that event, I definitely were shades of that event, because maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I actually wasn't at the 2004 halftime show. I wasn't actually looking at the TV at the instant that happened. I was looking around. I think I was eating something, and then all of a sudden I was sitting in the basement watching the halftime show with my father, my brother, and my uncle. And then all of a sudden I see my dad go, "What the fuck just happened?" I look up, and then she's covering herself, and I'm thinking to myself, "What happened?" So I had to rely, 12-year-old me, on witness reports. Oh, it was scandalous. It was scandalous. And there was a part of me that said, at least a part of me, that's saying, you know what? I want to see what happened. But I was going on witness reports for years and years and years.
But I get the point of it.
Public performances. There will come a point with these live performances where
that things are going to happen. I think here's the thing. First I want to give 2 shout-outs. One, shameless self-promotion. The other is actual, good shout-out. The shout-out I want to give is to what's his name? We had a guy from the Undetermined, a fellow Undeterminer. His name is Rich Renalik. He did a dramatic read of Mariah Carey's New Year's performance. I actually got to listen to it last night, and I think he nailed it on the head. That was great.
Head over to the Undetermined if you want to see it. It is genius. It is genius.
It is genius, and I'm going to do a shameless self-promotion. There's a website that I write for, and I'm actually starting an internship for. It's called Flock U, and I write for its sports section. I actually just wrote a piece about Mariah Carey and how there have been 2 incidences of the NBA pretty much making fun of Mariah Carey. The first happened at the Indiana Pacers game, where they had a lip sync cam because they had emotions playing in the background. But then I think it was topped by something, as we said, genius, and that would be the San Antonio Spurs and their mascot, the Coyote. Coyote was performing with the dance. About the Coyote was performing with the dancers, and it was just a perfect impersonation of what happened on New Year's Eve.
It was.
It was so great. Good job, Spurs.
And let's not spend the entire thing just dumping on Mariah Carey, because she's been around for years and years and years, and let's
right. But my point is,
everybody has an off performance.
Right. But my point is, I think what pissed me off was when it's like she said live on the hot mic, "Oh, this is the album version." So it's like she said, "Oh, I'm not going to try." Fucking try! I'm sorry. This is a big stage. Put effort into it.
I have a lot of respect for her, because, if that was me, I would have voided my bowels in front of almost 1 million people.
Okay, but we're training to be journalists, where if we're going to be on-screen personalities, we're going to have earpieces in, producers yelling,
Yeah. And you got to learn how to vamp.
It's a business.
And she did it. I mean, she was able to keep, sometimes keep her composure. I mean, Especially, I would have been swearing. I would have been swearing at them. They would have had to have me on a 15-second tape delay for all the swearing that I'd be doing at everything.
You're listening to the Unspoken Podcast, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network.
Mariah Carey, I think it's safe to assume, is now the first meme of 2017.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year. And I think there will be one celebrity who can possibly save her, and that's if Steve Harvey screws up the Miss Universe again later this month.
Please. Oh, God. Oh, that's gonna be something. Or Travolta puts his foot in his mouth if they invite him to the Oscars again.
I would put more money on Steve Harvey. At least he's going to make fun of himself for what happened last year.
Yeah, at least. I mean, the guy's a comedian. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we must transition to the big event this weekend. It's wild card fucking weekend. So here we go, folks. It's playoff football.
Playoff football, and the Giants are finally back in it.
Finally. Oh, my goodness gracious, and they had to take the hardest path.
Well, that's the thing about the Giants.
We can never make it easy for ourselves. We always have to go the hard route.
Nope. Even with an 11-5 record, you can't. Boy.
Anyways, okay. So we have 4 wild card games this weekend. We have at 4:30 on Saturday on ESPN. We have the Oakland Raiders taking on the Houston Texans. Then at 8:15 on NBC, we have the Detroit Lions taking on the Seattle Seahawks.
Then on Sunday at 1 o'clock on CBS, it's Miami Dolphins taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then at 4:40, it's the main event, New York Giants traveling to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers.
Now, they've played the Packers in the playoffs on the road to their Super Bowl wins in 2008 and 2011, and both times they've played the Packers.
Right.
Now
they played the Packers in the NFC Championship game in the 07-08 season, and they won on the field goal after Brett Favre committed an interception. It was almost, we were all thinking, going to be the last play of Brett Favre's career.
And, that interception was sweet.
And then came 2011-2012 season when they ran over the Packers in the divisional round. And now here we are in the wild card.
This is a different Packers team, and this is a different Giants team, though. And
I mean, when you think about it, well, the 2007 team for the Giants, the 2011 team, and this season's team were all completely different.
And yeah, and the only real constant, at these teams were the people quarterbacking them.
Right, Eli Manning. Eli's the only constant.
Folks, this is going to be if the Giants defense can step up and play like they've been playing this entire year, the Giants may just be able to win this thing. And I apologize for being the Giants fan who is a pessimist, but it's going to be a very, very difficult road ahead of us, especially if the offense continues to underperform.
All right, here's my big thing. All right, you ready for this? I think the playoffs are going to go one of two. Number one, they get eliminated by the Packers on Sunday.
That's always yeah. You can't get that out.
Number two, they play in the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, it's going to go one of those two ways. I don't think there's any in between.
I gotta disagree with you. The way this team has been on, and the teams they will have to face to get there. There are always pitfalls.
I mean,
pitfalls at every point, and they can't get complacent, even if they do. I mean, they do make things. Don't take anything for granted.
Here's my thing. Green Bay, I think, is going to be a big. You have Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson. You have the rest of the offense from Starks and Ty Montgomery. That's a tough matchup. You have two great No, I mean, for the Giants, there's a good offense. The Packers are a great offense, but the Giants, their defense, whoo, what?
Is otherworldly.
Yes, the Giants' defense, my God. And I'm not just saying that because they helped me great in fantasy football this year, but my God.
That's why you're saying it. Come clean, Tom.
Okay, because the Giants' defense did amazing for me in fantasy football.
Okay, there you go. Honesty on our folks. Honesty on our show, folks.
But I'm also a Giants fan, like you are, so I have to root for the defense.
Any semblance of objectivity in this conversation goes flying out the window, folks. And it's going to be like I was saying before. It's going to be if the Giants' defense can play the way it's been playing for most of the year,
then I think they got a good chance.
They do have an excellent chance to win.
I got to agree with you there. I will. Here's why. One of the reasons I said I think it would be, Super Bowl or bust at this point for the Giants, because let's look at the rest of the NFC. You had the Packers. Like I said, it's going to be a big match on that. You had the Detroit Lions, who I think the Giants could absolutely whoop if they play their, the right way. If they're fuck up and they do the let's make it hard on ourselves again, then that's just on them.
Which is definitely,
Which is definitely a case.
On the table at this point.
Right. But, like I said, I think they could whoop Lions from here till whenever.
They've done it this season.
Right. You have Seattle. I mean,
That's a tough thing.
Number one, you're facing the Legion of Boom. That's the downside.
Number two, Russell Wilson is a slippery bastard, and you can never seem to actually sack that guy.
Right. Although, to be fair, he also has had 11 interceptions this season to his 21 touchdowns.
So you may have
a good Wilson or a bad Wilson.
Down on him.
Right. But you got to also give credit to where credit is due. Thomas Rawls has really stepped since coming from injury.
He has. Look at his stats. He's at least for the second half on.
I actually have Rawls' numbers right in front of me for this season: 349 yards on 109 carries and 3 touchdowns.
Like I said before, it's not going to be easy.
And then you have Atlanta. Matt Ryan has been on fire. Even when he...
Yeah. I don't know if I'd put that kind of... that kind of faith in Matt Ryan. But, yeah.
I know what you're saying. But, even when he lost Sanu and Julio Jones, he still had a surefire game.
He did. And there I go again, underestimating their chances. Like I said, anybody, it's the playoffs. Anything is possible.
Right. The one thing I want more than anything else in the world, even more than the Giants winning, I don't want the Patriots and Cowboys making the Super Bowl. Okay,
I definitely don't want that. No. Mm-mm.
And first of all, that's not just because Patriots, Cowboys. Second of all, it's also, here's the thing about the Cowboys. That's the last team. I was saving this for last. I think you can agree with me that I'm fucking sick and tired of hearing everybody talking about the Cowboys and how great Dak Prescott is.
Indeed, I am. And when the Cowboys play next week, it's going to be intensified.
This is what I said to a friend. If the Giants lose the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, yes, it's going to hurt. But if we can beat the Cowboys on the road to it, that's a blessing. Because they're promoting Dak Prescott. Yes. Yes, he's shown some stuff. He's been pretty good. But it's just, you promote them like it's no tomorrow, and you promote them like they're this undefeated team when you have 2 Giants losses. And then last week, sure, you rested a bunch of the starters last week, but still last week you lost to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and still, most of was the defense, at least on the field, I didn't even check that game out.
I barely checked that game out myself. I wasn't concerned about that. I was concerned about the Giants.
I don't care about Mark Sanchez because it's not 2009 anymore.
All right, but you know what, Nick? We are running out of time, but I want to do one last thing with you to wrap this up.
Okay.
Let's say you can't pick the Giants.
Who would you pick besides the Giants in the NFC to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl?
Of the teams that we have left.
Right, just not the Giants.
If it's not the Giants, it would have to be the Packers.
I will agree with you on that. I will agree with you.
Because I still, as much as I despise, the teams that the Giants play against, especially on the road to the playoffs, there's still something that is eminently watchable about watching Aaron Rodgers work. And
Jordy Nelson, who's, 41 years old, and he's had this amazing comeback season?
He's half dust, and he's proving everybody wrong. And there's always something that, even if you're a fan of football, I love to watch these guys work. And so if it doesn't happen, I would at least, if the Giants don't pull it out this week, I would rather the Packers go all the way.
Right. How about the AFC? Let me look at the teams right now. Well, I can tell you Houston's not making it.
No, they're
How about J.J. Watt?
No.
Oakland's not making it without Derek Carr.
And you got to feel bad for Oakland fans. They were waiting so long for this.
The fact that Miami got through is a miracle. All when Tannehill was throwing interceptions like crazy, you're all thinking, they're doomed.
They're like the drunk guy that actually slips into the bar by hiding behind a big party that walks into the door. Hey, how the fuck did you get in?
Right. The reason they're in there, let me tell you, it's two people. J.I.J. and Jarvis Landry. That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, folks. But it's the playoffs. You can do damage.
I know, but it's not going to be them because they're facing the Pittsburgh. Hello there, Ben Roethlisberger. Hello, Le'Veon Bell. Hello, Antonio Brown.
So who would be your pick for the AFC?
So that would leave the Patriots, that would leave the Steelers, and that would leave Kansas City. And I hate to say it, but just because I don't want to pick the Patriots and Cowboys because, I don't want that Super Bowl, and I can't pick the Giants. If you eliminate all three of those teams, I think we're going to have a 2011 Super Bowl rematch. I think it's going to be the Packers and the Steelers.
That could actually be watchable. I mean, I despise Ben Roethlisberger personally, but that he's still good to watch in football.
Right, and those two teams are as dominant as they were back into the 2011. And I mean, you got history. Titletown. That's Green Bay, but also Pittsburgh, you could argue, is a title town too with the Steelers. Terrible towel and all.
God, I hate those things. I really, really do.
All right, so I guess that is going to do it for episode number 2 of the Unspoken Podcast.
So join us next week where we will either eat our words or we will exult triumphantly in our rightness. It's going to be good. It's going to be good listening either way, folks. Tune in when you can.
Yep, I'm Tom Albano, and for Nick Federa, thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to the Unspoken Podcast, part of the Undetermined Podcast Network. See you next week.
See you next week.